Hey YouTube, this is the Art of Prepping. Thanks for joining me. We're talking about today fire starters within traditional bushcraft. When you think about bushcraft, at least for me, I default back to the flint and steel. And that just tends to be what I think, just because that's what I've read a lot about. Um, there's also different things that kind of have substituted in the modern era for that. It's still in the same principle. This is a steel and flint striker, but it also has a bar that encases around part of the flint. And this is, of course, a magnesium bar fire starter. And so this is kind of a modern variant of the flint and steel. But I still think the flint and steel is the standard. Now, there's other types of primitive means. Definitely would be the bow drill. You would also have to include the fire plow and, of course, fire syringe. And those things are typically included into traditional bushcraft. Now, when we think about, the modern day, people just don't typically use these unless they're just trying to have a challenge or trying to reminisce or do more of the primitive old world types of techniques that go back several hundred years. So in the modern day, we're typically using like lighters, matches, and other types of focused reflectors to create our fire. And so combustion, though, is such a large issue and a large need when you're out in the wild, depending on if you need to cook food or have heat or to create a boundary line of protection against wild predators. It's something that we should have a lot of knowledge about. So in traditional bushcraft, it's pretty common to have a nice piece or several pieces of flint. And to get that, you can go to a lot of creek beds. Of course, not all creek beds in the United States or in Europe has flint. If there are no flint in your area, you can definitely find this online. You can get flint flakes, or you can even learn how to nap flint and to create other tools with it besides just pieces to strike with steel. Now, steel typically really is the better means to get that hard edge and to have a hard surface to hit to create that spark. So that's what typically people use high carbon steel, with their flint to create, flame or spark or fire, if you will. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's other different means, as I mentioned earlier, about the primitive techniques and skills. Mainly the one that gets the most attention that I see, at least in the modern day, when people go back to those more traditional means of fire making, is going to be the bow drill. The bow drill takes a lot of practice, though, people. It's something that you have to really master. It takes months, if not possibly years, depending on your abilities, to do that. So is it necessary to know how to do that? Maybe in theory, and maybe you want to actually physically do it. But in the modern day, there's so many different options and so many redundancies that you can build in that would take you a long time to deplete before you'd ever get to that level. It may not be something you want to do. But if you're into traditional bushcrafting, as this video is about, you should probably explore it. So that just concludes the fire part of this small series on traditional bushcrafting gear and tools. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about some other tools, in particular bladed tools for wood processing. Thanks for your support.